Welcome back, friends, to season 3 of We Take the Hill, and I'm super excited for you to check out today's episode with our guest, Miss Daniella Sheval.
From South Africa to California to New York City, our next guest is no stranger to significant life change. So it should have surprised absolutely no one when she decided to quit her job in fashion after 7 years into the industry to start her own footwear brand. But of course it did. It surprises everyone. It always surprises everyone. Woo, I'm surprised. 6 years now into the shoe wear business, she not only has her own luxury shoe brand, she also has a storefront on Bleecker Street, one of the poshest streets in Manhattan. Today, we are honored to get the opportunity to speak with the beauty, the brains, and the boss behind Daniella Sheval, Miss Daniella Sheval. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really greatly appreciate it. I might keep my phone, but it's for you to ask you questions.
Appreciate it.
Before we jump into things, I have to ask you a very important question, and the rest of this interview hinges upon the way you answer this question.
Oh boy.
California or New York?
New York, for sure.
All right. I didn't want to have to like stop, but thank you for saying that. I greatly appreciate it. What was it like naming your shoe brand and your shoe company Daniella Sheval?
I think honestly it was a little bit of a, not I would say rookie mistake or rookie thing to do, because it was just what I was seeing of like all the big designers who've named you know, their brands off and put their name on it. And I think it came naturally as well, because it is such an extension of me. So it made sense. Everything that who I am is put into the brand.
Yeah.
But there certainly are days sometimes where, you know, it is a bit scary. It's like, well, if everything goes to shit, well, my name, that's my name on there.
Yeah, I was like, well, hey, you know, change your name, move somewhere else.
Days where I was like, I could have thought of another one, but that's what happened.
No, but I love it. I love the fact, because I feel like that's how invested you are. So I don't know. I wouldn't say what rookie mistake, but I think that's investment. But I never thought about it if, you know, things go south. You're just out of a name and out of a company.
Totally.
Here's to not going south.
There we go.
Just a backstory on like We Take the Hill. So I started saying this because honestly, to remind myself that it's like a privilege for me to do hard, challenging things. I walked into the cross country team in college, had this really crazy, challenging hill workout, complained, moaned, and griped to my coach. She said, "Why don't you quit?" And I was like, "I'm not quitting." Like reminding myself that like, it's a privilege for me to be here to do this. Right. And after that, hill workouts, hero repeats, hero training, tough things became like my go-to and my mantra in life. And so that's kind of how we got here. I started sharing that story with my students, and they started telling me about different moments, not only in their workouts, but also in their lives where they felt like they took the hill. And I was just like, you know what, that's really interesting. I want to have these conversations with more people. And so that's how we got here. I want to talk about how you got to where you are at the top of your hill, so to speak. I'm not, you know, there's a long way to go, but we have these journeys.
Absolutely.
And it's baked into our lives naturally, where we have ascents and descents.
Right.
And so I just really want to have that conversation with you today. Tell us a little bit about you. What's your backstory prior to getting into fashion, prior to getting into the shoe industry? Tell us about your backstory.
So I grew up in South Africa, Johannesburg. We moved when I was 17 years old. Me, my 3 siblings, and my parents to San Diego, California.
Okay.
So arrived kind of the middle of junior year and was like kind of dropped into the whole high school scene.
Wow.
And so the immigration, I think, was like that first big part of my life that had a lot of change, and it was a lot of adjusting and adapting. And then from there is when I then went on to college in Los Angeles, and then found my way to New York for many reasons, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Wow. So what was it like growing up in South Africa? Do you have like a lot of memories? Because at 17, you've essentially lived a whole life. You know what I mean?
Right.
17 years old to pick up and to now move somewhere else. How was that for you?
No, it was, I think, probably the hardest for my parents, because they had 3 teenage girls. So
Okay.
moving at that time was very difficult. And but growing up in South Africa, Johannesburg, unfortunately, there is a very high crime rate. So security was a big thing and a big problem. And we had encountered something as far as the crime rate that I think just was kind of sent my parents over the edge of if we can find a way to move and have an opportunity to be in America and have that safety, that was something they wanted to take. So that was why we moved. But growing up, it was great. I mean, it's like, just close-knit community. So many cultures, obviously, as well. You had it is obviously this post-apartheid era. You had, especially when Madiba and Nelson Mandela came in, it was a very exciting time. So and obviously all my friends and they were just visiting 2 weeks ago. It's like, it's those childhood friends that know you from like 1, 2 years old. It's kind of like time never passes. So.
Okay, I love that. All right, and so how was like getting accustomed to like the school system here? Was it very like a lot different? Like, what was that like?
Oh, it was. My mom would say it's kind of like you're in like a washing machine. It goes this way and then it goes that way. Like I remember we like our school years are different, and then I started the middle of junior year, and then they told me, oh, you need to take the SAT to get into college. Never heard of what an SAT was. That's not how we do it in South Africa as far as college. So it was just also getting up to speed very quickly in order to get into college even. And then I also remember it was tough because everyone had formed, and culturally, obviously, it's very different, even from state to state in the US. I've never realized like how different culturally we as immigrants always think, oh, America is like all the same, but everywhere is different. So culturally, it was obviously tough, especially as a teenager, because your friends are everything, and people had already had their groups. I remember like the school bell would go, and it was like almost like a scary time because everyone rushes out to lunch, and we kind of got like my sister and I, she was a grade below because we were both in high school, we were kind of like left alone. So eventually we used to have my dad kind of drive by, pick us up, drive us around, eat our lunch in the car, and then head back to class because we didn't want to be sitting alone at lunch. But I think eventually once we headed to college and everyone was kind of also at a fresh start, it started to become a lot easier.
Yeah, because I was like, that could be a very difficult, challenging time, like in and of itself. Okay, so you go to school in Los Angeles. Where did you go to school?
University of Southern California.
Okay, all right. And how was that for you?
That was great. I mean, there's definitely nothing like the US college system for sure. I would tell my friends back in South Africa, they're like, sororities, football games, like what is football? Because we have soccer. So it was a totally different experience, and like none other, I think, that you can only get in the US.
I feel like,
I
feel like when I talk to my friends that also they're international, they're really jealous of that. So
absolutely.
You go to school, you decide to study business. And then you decide after graduating that you're going to move to New York. What prompted that interest to move to New York?
So New York, I think for me, and probably for many people who come from maybe outside of America, it's like if you can't make it in New York, you can't make it anywhere. So I've always been kind of an ambitious person. I wanted to be here, but then I did have this lingering kind of back of my mind dream as far as starting a footwear brand. And knowing that New York was the fashion capital, I figured, well, it's best to plant my feet here. And so that was the main reason.
What inspired this dream? So you obviously we know where you are now, and but when did you have that dream? Like, when did that dream become like solidified in your mind?
Totally. So I was 13.
13?
We were on a trip to Las Vegas, actually, visiting from South Africa, and I walked into a Jimmy Choo store. I'd never heard of the brand or seen anything. Obviously, everything very expensive and big and bright. But there was this pair of stilettos, like very in your face, neon orange, patent leather black. I think Fergie had just worn them actually in some gossip magazine I'd seen. And I fell in love with the architecture, kind of the art of how it just stood there on its own even. And when I went back, I read the story and read more about the brand and learned about Tamara Mellon and how she had kind of forged this brand ahead with Jimmy Choo, and it became a big inspiration for me because she was a woman. I felt like I could kind of relate to that. I never heard a lot of stories about women in those positions, especially back in that day. So I think between that, loving shoes and design and that architectural nature, I think it was just a very inspiring story to me that I then kind of took on and was like, I think this is something I want to do.
Okay, so but you go to school, you don't study fashion. You
Right.
don't study anything related to it. Why is that? Like, what was...
I think I'd pigeonholed myself a little bit. I was like very academic growing up.
Okay.
I'm the oldest responsible
Yes,
one, as we kind of have spoken about before.
Yeah.
And I think it was just one of those moments where I wasn't sure, so I thought, well, I'll just be safe, study the business side. And I think also I do realize too that a lot of designers oftentimes don't have the business background. And so I felt like if I did get to the point where this was going to become a business, it was important to maybe have that grounding and figure out how, if the design was so important, if I needed to go study design, I could do that at a later date.
Oh, I love that. And so you moved to New York City. Do you know anyone in New York?
No.
Did you have any connections or any ties to New York
No,
at all?
my mom's like hyperventilating. She's like, what? Mom, I'm leaving my city in New York City. What's going on, Jackie? No. She's in the cab pulling away crying and like, what am I doing?
So your mom didn't come with you to get you settled in?
Yeah, she came with me to help get me settled in.
Okay.
I was just grappling to find a job and I ended up even with an internship. I couldn't find something, as far as full-time, like a full-time job paying to start.
So the internship that you find, is that a free internship or are you?
It was paid, but
paid? Okay.
Yeah, it was paid.
Okay, that's, you know what? As a New Yorker that also interned in the fashion industry, I was like, but still, I was like, I've interned in the fashion industry. You don't get nothing. So you know what? $13, we'll take it.
No,
we'll take
let me
it.
tell you, I was happy. I was excited.
We'll take that. Okay. Okay. So you have your first internship, and then what happens next? Like, how do we progress from there?
So it was one of those things like Steve Jobs often spoke about it, where it's like you connect your dots, and everyone's dots are different, but it's what those connections of those dots really becomes like not only your journey, but also kind of what makes you unique to whatever job or pursuit you're going to go on to do. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but the job that was open was in digital marketing. And so I was, not realizing, I started getting a lot of experience on the digital marketing side working for fashion brands.
Yeah.
So and that was kind of also then what helped me launch my own brand on the digital marketing side.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. I love that because, again, it's that kind of idea that everything that you're doing is also like kind of like the base of your hill, so to speak, and you're kind of building into what it is you're naturally going to end up doing. So, for a lot of people, just moving to a new environment, not having any family, not having any ties, any connections, that alone is their hill. That is the biggest hill that they'll ever, and that's okay, right? For you, how did it feel in the moment? Like you have a break, you have something that's paid, but $13 an hour, let's be for real, living in New York City, I mean, come on, no family, coming from a very close family, no family. How does all this feel? And at what point are you in this fashion industry? Because obviously you left. At what point do you feel overwhelmed? Like, what does all of this look like?
Sure. I think, it was overwhelming, but I think at the time too, like just getting the job and landing it, I think there was a lot of gratitude in that. So I think it helped with being overwhelmed on some days where it was like, just be grateful and kind of, you're here in the city that, oh my gosh, like not many people can say they get to live and be. And look, there's no doubt too, I think it was important. Like I would go home every 2 months because I think too, sometimes you got to take a break from New York and the pace is great. It's fast, but you can't keep going at that pace all the time. So I almost go home, realign, and then kind of come back.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're in the industry. How long before you get like your first real, like, I'm in a solid position? Like how long does it take before you feel like you have like a really good job, you have a good fitting in New York?
4 years.
4 years?
4 or 5 years.
Okay, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the friction point then? Because you're 4 or 5 years in, you're doing digital marketing still, you're winning. Right. You've come here $13, now you're winning. What becomes the friction point?
I think it was twofold. So the one was certainly the shoe dream was still in the back of my mind. It was something that I felt like eventually I was going to pursue on some level.
Okay.
I just didn't know when or how. Honestly, I just kind of trusted that when the moment was right, I would know.
Okay.
And then also, I was wearing shoes and going to, you know, corporate events or corporate meetings and standing in these crazy stilettos that mostly were designed by men.
Yeah.
And it's just so uncomfortable. And so at
Yeah.
the same time, I was like, this is crazy. Something's got to change too. Where like, I want to wear great shoes, but
Yeah.
everything is just so, the design is so dominated by the view of what a man's design is
Yeah.
for a woman's shoe. And so I felt like I started to see that gap too, which kind of almost double excited me,
Yeah.
because I was like, I think I can design and do something a bit different here. You
Yeah.
know, especially for that working woman. And as we've seen women and they're growing their careers now and having
Yeah.
that as a focus. So.
Yeah. Okay. And so you have the idea still kind of like in the back of your mind, this 13-year-old Daniella's idea that I want to design shoes one day. What do you do about it?
So I think you verbalize it. A lot of people say like just put it out in the universe. Like
Yeah.
I remember we'd do like work retreats, and we do sometimes like, well, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? Some people
Yeah.
would say, oh, I'd be an astronaut, I'd be this, but everyone
Yeah.
always knew like I'd be doing shoes. So I think when I left and quit, no one was really
Yeah, no one
surprised
was
by
really
it. Like I
surprised,
kind
yeah.
of just kept verbalizing it.
Yeah,
Like I want to
okay.
design shoes someday, as random as that sounded, and
Okay.
maybe kind of so the opposite of maybe what I was doing or focusing on. And then I did meet someone who just happened to be in footwear production
Okay.
through a friend in Mexico. I heard about it, and so that was kind of when the wheels started turning. I thought, well, maybe I've met someone who's just an into the industry, and
Yeah.
this is maybe the time to kind of start exploring that.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. And so you start exploring that how? What does that look like?
So I, got in touch with this person. We get introduced. We start talking. He promises me the world in terms of shoe production and what he
Yeah.
can do, and it's in Mexico. But I think that first foray ended up being. It was not successful at all.
Okay.
But I kind of
What
I
does
kept,
that? What does not successful look like? Because not successful can mean like he didn't call you back. Not successful mean it didn't go anywhere. But
Right.
what was not successful? Because
Oh.
I need to.
Not
we need to
successful was
understand.
it was time and money spent. Where 8 months later.
8 months.
8 months
Okay.
later, yeah, because we had started prototyping in Mexico, and it was just not, the product just was not coming back as I envisioned,
Yeah.
and it was just always more money. We needed
How
to
much
do more of this.
did you invest?
With him, it was probably around 8 to 10,000 all in, and then I realized that this is just like not the place for like the type of shoes I want to make, but also
Yeah.
his experience was just not aligning.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to get the product that I needed, and
Yeah.
so I knew that I needed to then start looking elsewhere and pivot essentially, because
Yeah.
it wasn't working.
So you meet this guy, and how far are you into your career in fashion? Are you still there? Are you still doing this? Everyone knows that like if you were ever to quit your job, you would go into shoes.
So at this point is when I met this guy, is kind of when I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go all in. I think it was a
Okay.
little bit impulsive, probably, but I also at the same time was still looking for other jobs. So I was like, well, maybe this like kind of unfulfilled feeling, is it more to do with my current job?
Yeah.
But what I realized is I was getting job offers, but I wasn't taking them. I was like finding something wrong with them. So I just kind of continued to build the website, trying to build the brand, the logo, all those other
Okay, so
you
you were kind of like silently in the background,
exactly
creating the world that you wanted, but you were kind of still like straddling the fence, still in this world.
100%.
So you were you never kind of really let go of this like childhood dream. You kind of like was always holding on to it, but kind of creating it around what you're presently doing.
right.
Ah, okay. And so when you meet him, you decide, you know what, I'm actually just going to go for it and I'm going to do it. So you quit altogether.
Yeah.
Okay. So you quit your job altogether, and for 8 months, you work with this maniac. No, just kidding.
Right.
I don't know the man. But you work with him for 8 months.
Yep.
You invest about $10,000. Do your friends and your family know about this? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I
told
think
everyone?
if you
Okay.
tell everyone, they're excited. Maybe they're thinking you're crazy, but every time you're seeing them, what's the progress? What are the updates and everything else?
Yeah. You're going to like dinners, you're going to socializing, and they're saying,
Yeah.
how is it going?
Yeah.
You quit your job. How is it?
Totally.
Everyone,
What did you
how
do
is
today?
it? What did you do today?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, I lost more money.
Right.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
All right. So for 8 months, you go through this. And what do you decide to do? Like, do you ever get any shoes? Like, what is the end product of that, end result of that?
We got a couple of pairs, and then, I just kind of realized this is not working. Like, his credentials are not matching up with kind of what he had said.
Yeah.
I'm obviously have lost money already.
Yeah.
So definitely like freaked out and scared and nervous and kind of, blaming myself as well and being very hard on myself. And so I decided to go back, and I found like a kind of a temporary job to cover someone on maternity leave to kind of bring in some more income. And then that's when I figured, okay, I knew the ways I needed to pivot in terms of where the shoes were made as well, and then finding an agent or someone who was on the ground, because obviously I'm learning as I'm also making all of these mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
So you may have started at the bottom, but this really horrible experience has helped you climb a little bit further closer to your goal, because you've learned lesson. You're like, just find an agent, find someone to talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Boots on the ground, like
boots on the ground. Military term. You got to get boots on the ground. Literally, you have to get boots on the ground. Ching-ching. I love that. So you decide like you're gonna work part-time, you're a contractor. Like, how does this work?
Yeah, I was working full-time, but it was like a short-term contract, because I figured, okay, after these 3-4 months is when I'll be ready to, I will have enough to kind of
so
go
you're
off.
okay, you know what, that's very smart. So you were just like, I'm not going to fully step out of the dream, because if I step out of it, like, I might, you kind of might give up,
Yeah, totally.
So you're still in it. You're just like, I'm still doing it, but I'm going to go 3 or 4 months. And then you decide, I need to go where the shoes are being made.
Well, and during that time when I had the contract job, like during the lunches or lunch breaks or whatever we'd have, is when I'm calling, I've LinkedIn someone and messaged them, and I'm getting on a call with them quickly, and then I'm seeing, is there someone in Italy that I can speak to?
Yeah.
And just looking for just trying to get in touch with as many people to kind of give me some clues as to who to speak to next.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So you find someone. Where are they?
In Italy.
In Italy?
Yep.
Okay. And what was the next step?
The next step was found someone who, so he had worked in Italy before. He was based still in the US, but he said, no, I can help you get your shoes. Just send me the designs. I can help you get the shoes and protos made. I know a ton of factories in Italy, send them over, and we started development and production that way.
Okay.
Well, not production, development.
Yeah.
And so start a whole new thing with him, sending the designs over, and by like the 3rd month, I'm now waiting for the protos, and I'm like going on lunch breaks, trying to time it up also with like Italy's timing, because he says, no, we can't get hold of the factory. I'm calling the factory, they're not answering. Turns out it had now gone, like 3 months had passed, they had gone out of business, and they never even bothered to just, let me know or anything else. So I'd now lost another 3 months. Plus, I now needed to face everyone at dinner again and tell them, oh no, sorry, still no prototypes.
Also, now, was that 11 months in?
Yep.
Still at dinner, like, I'm doing this.
Yeah, entrepreneurship life is great.
Yeah,
Winning,
it's great.
winning,
Yes.
winning.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So they've gone out of business. I would like to say to you, I mean, obviously you know this. This is Italy.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they've gone out of business, and this is when you're just like, I need to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your strategy at that point when you're just like, I need to actually go and be boots on the ground?
So I then now kind of learned that there are agents who are there, and I figured also I needed to be there. I needed to meet the factory, learn more about the factory, make sure that their balance sheet meant they weren't going out of business in 2 months.
Okay.
And so I asked my mom if she would come with me.
Yeah.
And so we had a few meetings set up with agents, and what they do then is they take you around to different factories to see if there is a fit, and then if there's a mutual agreement to want to work together.
Okay,
so
I love that. So I want to ask a question. So we're going to get to you going and actually being out there with your mom. But like at this point in time, there's 8 months since you decided to quit your job and you've told everyone that you know possible, which I think is brave and also a way to hold your feet to the fire.
Right. Accountable.
But you've told everyone. You've lost $10,000. You've been like kind of bamboozled by someone in Mexico. You've gone to Italy. You've working with a factory in Italy. Also more money, also more time. This is like a total of 11 months. Why don't you stop? Why don't you say like, this is obviously stupid and like, perhaps this is, you know, not the hill that I should be climbing?
I think my parents were great in like being very supportive. Sometimes I'm like, third time's a charm.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. And I think too, it was, look, I think that's why you also, many companies never even get off the ground to prototype, and that's why. And so this was going to be my one last shot, I think, in my mind, of giving it a try.
Yeah, I love that. But you also, I think what I love is your framing. So like you said, you're in New York, you have like this internship and like, it's not great, but you're just like, not everyone gets this opportunity. You're here and now you are like, hey, not everyone gets a prototype.
Right.
I've done it.
Right.
So perhaps, you know what I mean? I like
totally.
that. I like that.
And I guess
that
like
framing.
you said, each time I was a little bit closer.
Yeah,
right?
you're a little bit closer. You're a little bit further up the hill. So I like that. Okay, so now you decide you're going to go to Italy with your mom. What does that investment of time look like? What does that investment of finances look like?
It was it's about 2-3 weeks, and where the factories are also just like
2 to 3
very,
weeks. Okay.
Yeah, very specific parts of Italy. So I had 2 agents lined up, and we were going door to door then with those agents. They had set up those meetings and sitting down with the factories, showing them my designs, explaining my background, and kind of seeing the types of shoes that they produce and having conversations. But it really came down to
I want dollars and cents. I need dollars and cents. And I want dollars and cents because I think sometimes like we can not understand the investment, the bet that you're making on yourself.
Well, even on the
That's
travel.
what I want. I want that because I just think that people, a lot of times it's a bet that you're making on yourself.
Right.
It is a financial risk that you're saying, I'm going to invest in me. And it's more specifically for you, you're investing in your name. Right. So what does that like look like at this point and this difference, this next like step?
Right.
So 3 weeks in Italy.
Yeah.
Use flights for you and your mom.
Definitely use some travel points.
Travel points. Also, you have like agents, multiple agents. So a ballpark.
So ballpark, the agents themselves only until you hire them do they charge.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing.
So that was that really. It was really just the travel expenses to kind of get around. But that only once you take them on do they then make money.
Okay. Amazing. All right. So you're there for 3 weeks. You go around. What does that look like?
So we're going literally, I feel like door to door.
Door-to-door salesman, kind of pitching yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lots of, old Italian guys looking at me in these factories who's been around forever. And I'm also pitching a model where it's just more direct to consumer. They only know wholesale. That's how the industry's been forever. So trying to convince them, obviously, why to bet on me, why my model's going to work. But then, excuse me, the hardest part was, okay, well, how many pairs can you order off the bat? Because they need quantities. And that always is what came down to where it was like, no, it's not worthwhile for us. And we need like thousands of pairs ordered or hundreds and hundreds of pairs. So that was hard. So that was weird. About a week and a half in, we didn't have any factory. Okay. We were still. So now I'm thinking, we've traveled all this way. My poor mom, I'm dragging around to all these meetings, and we don't have a factory secured. But then finally, we're walking to one factory. We're looking at the shoes. The owner comes in, doesn't speak much English, but we start talking, and he was really eventually kind of the first guy who said, yes, you know what? Give it to me. I'll give it a try. I like your designs. Let's try it.
Yeah. How comforting was it to have your mom there doing that process? Because I know that's a lot of rejection, but your mom is also a designer, right? Like
interior designer.
So
yeah.
how pivotal was that for you to have her there?
You're right. I underestimate probably. Well, not underestimate. She's been amazing, and like my biggest cheerleader. So I think it was great. But there were times of guilt too, where I was like, oh, drag my poor mom now across the world, or like living in these dingy hotels, you know, going to some of these places that just, you know, not the prettiest looking, and it's not kind of working out. Hopefully it will work out. But then her interior design experience was great because she also, like, she has a great eye for color, so she's informed just a lot of, like, even just the colorways. Her philosophy also is always very big on like proportion and things in proportion in any room or setting. And even from the designs as well, like she'd always remind me, remember, you're not just designing for your feet. Remember my feet that are ruined from years of wearing bad shoes with bunions. And so that's stuck. And also I think a big selling point now also is that our shoes are made for the 56-year-old woman who actually may have feet that, you know, have quite a few problems now. So
okay, that's awesome. So you finally get a yes. And from the time that you started this journey to the time you get your first yes, how much time is that?
It's about a year and a half.
About a year and a half. Yeah. Okay. So you guys, you get a yes, you head home. What's next?
We're waiting for the protos to arrive.
Okay.
So about 2 months later, get a big shipment, and the shoes all arrive.
What happened with the shoes? What happened with the shoes?
This is just the protos. Protos arrived.
Protos arrive.
And
no problem.
For the most part, those were in good condition.
Okay.
Not too many edits needed.
Okay.
And so we finally had product at least to photograph, something I could like show people and say, no, I actually have a product.
I did this. This exists. Yeah, I'm not playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then kind of fast forward, that's when we then go to place the order.
Yeah.
And that's when I know that my first production order is coming in, and that's you know, as soon as that lands at JFK, that's when we can start shipping out and taking orders online for the shoes, because the website now at this point is pretty much ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. And then you lose all the shoes.
Yes, it's like,
which was like my
July 4th weekend.
Slide down the hill. Okay.
July 4th weekend. And I just get this call from, you know, the brokerage through the airport. Sorry, ma'am, we can't find the 400 pairs of shoes.
We can't find 400 pairs of shoes.
We don't
Imagine losing 400 pairs of shoes.
You know, like, I was beside myself.
I mean, losing your keys, okay. But
no, I was okay. So, and I'm just sitting by the phone waiting for someone to call me back. I mean, at like US Customs. I mean, just like, so at that point I was ready to get in the car and go to JFK and like just search every airplane that I could. But then about 4 days later, they came back and said that they'd found them, they located, got a bit lost with the holiday shuffle.
All right, so you find the shoes, website is launched, working out of your apartment to set up everything with your intern. And
no intern.
No intern
yet.
at this point, just you.
I think I called my sister out at that point.
You called your sister? Okay. So you're luckily you have this digital marketing background, you're taking photos, like, you're getting everything set up.
Right.
Yeah?
Yep.
And your sister, is it your younger sister, your youngest sister? Who buys the first pair of shoes?
Gabby.
Gabby?
Yeah. She was sitting next to me, actually.
She was sitting next to you?
We hit live, and then I suddenly see it disappear for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then I saw she'd gone to place an order, and then I see it pop up on my phone, your first order.
Oh, that's amazing. So what does that feel like? Your first order, your first pair of shoes, your first photograph of your shoe, holding your very first shoe in your hand. What is that like?
Yeah, I think holding the first proto was probably the craziest to me, and you see your logo, your name on the shoe. So that was very exciting. And then that first order was great, but I kind of knew it was from my sister, so I loved her for that. But I was like, oh gosh, I'm waiting.
Who are you excited about? Like, who was the first person? Because the thing is that if I'm your sister, I'm like, you better have remembered the name of that very first person that bought a shoe then, because I mean, if I wasn't, you know,
right? I mean, honestly though, Mars, in the beginning, it was just friends and family. You get this big bump, and they're all excited for you. So you you get this sales bump, but it was all friends and family.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, the website goes live, people are going to find you, and then the orders are going to get placed. And then, so the friends and family, and then it just went dead.
Yeah.
It was like 2 or 3 days of orders, and then nothing.
Then nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you find your break?
So that was when I knew I was going to start, as far as on my digital marketing side, my email marketing, paid advertising. And so I found an agency for that. And that's really when things then started to slowly but surely pick up. And it was also a period too there where we got to feel a bit of product market fit, to see which shoes were taking off, what creatives worked. Like the Belladonna was, I think, one of the integral pairs that we started to see really like eventually, you know, gain some momentum.
Yeah.
But it was really, just through those channels, but the continuous figuring out, you know, how we can push, how we can improve to get in front of people.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone going through a similar journey, a similar climb that you yourself faced?
I think really focus on always, like, everything comes down to the product.
Yeah.
You know, so firstly, like, always make sure that like your product is great. Obviously the problem you're solving you really believe in.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of it is if you can, I do think there's creative ways to, whether it's one prototype or just testing it, you can kind of test and do some of that. Instead of just talking about it, get it made, to kind of replicate it in some way that you can just test it, even with its small focus groups and whatnot. Because I think sometimes we think we just have to launch and go with it. And in many ways too, like you could probably just get sometimes 1 or 2 products that you're looking to launch, get those samples made, and then just give it time for that product market fit so you can tweak it. Because whatever you launch with, usually I feel like you end up having to tweak. Like we learned early on, I think I'd mentioned it to you, I launched with way too many styles. 1 or 2 were the ones that took off, and then it informed the whole line after that, as far as you know, adjusting those designs and kind of merchandise and tailoring it more to like those 1 or 2 designs.
Yeah, so you're gonna grow, your product is gonna grow as well, so you have to like be open to that.
Exactly.
I love that. What is one thing that you would like to thank Daniella for? The Daniella that decided to, you know, keep pushing for it. What would be the exact thing that you would like to thank her for?
I like this question. I think I'd like to thank her for like putting the ego aside, and it's messy and it's uncomfortable and there's a lot of tears, but I think just allowing myself to be very, very vulnerable. You are very vulnerable in these situations, and I think I just allowed myself to. I showed up many times feeling like very small and having accomplished nothing, and like this was going nowhere. So I think just allowing myself to continue to put that ego aside and just keep kind of putting myself in those situations, as uncomfortable as it may be.
Oh, I love that. What is the next hill for you?
So the next hill for us is we're like in that period now, or like kind of this moment now where you're like in that like 3 to 5 million revenue, which I think they term it the swamp sometimes. So it's like, now can you scale? Can you get to that next 10, 20 million? And what we've seen as far as, and all the brands are suffering from now, is just kind of the increased online ad costs and the acquisition. So our direct-to-consumer model no longer actually works. And so, as with any business, there's moments you have to pivot and redirect. So we're gonna, you know, we need to get into wholesale in some capacity to kind of now get those shoes on more people, get in front of more people without having to pay those crazy ad costs in a profitable way. And then get to that next tier as far as scaling, because we gotta get over that 5 million hump.
Oh, I love that. So you know what happens next, right?
Yep, we're gonna take this hill.
You're gonna take this hill? Yeah?
Are you guys, are you sure that's a good idea?
I'm sure. You're sure? Yeah.
Go! Oh! No, you did it! No, she did it! Look at her go! Go, Daniella! Go, Daniella!
Thank you so much for coming out today. We are just so honored to have you in our presence, and also just taking the lessons away from you of just changing and shifting our perspective and not being so overwhelmed by one small like defeat or one small rung on that ladder to our success. So thank you so much for coming out. And how can we find you?
The best way is definitely our website, DaniellaSheval.com.
Yeah.
Instagram for sure, we're super active there, so at DaniellaSheval.com.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, at Daniella Sheval. And you can get all the info there for our store, and yeah, if you want to order online as well, make it super easy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, no matter how difficult the journey, no matter how hard the climb, we take the hill every day.